Hi, in this session we are going to talk about what an RDBMS is. So an RDBMS stands for Relational Database Management System. So what kind of a databases we call it as an RDBMS? That's the focus of this session. So now when someone is going to give us a software which is used to store the data of our organization, it can be of any kind of a databases. So now we already talked about there are three types of databases in the market. One is Relational Database Management System, Network Database Management System, and Hierarchical Database Management System. Based on the nature of the data what you are going to store, you may end up choosing the different types of database management systems, which makes your business processes run faster, or your business in the implementation of business processes, and the data becomes much easier. Over 75% of the data which is which is used to run the organizations are using relational database management systems like Oracle or SQL Server or DB2 or Sybase. So now we will see what is the differentiator this database management system provides compared to the others. So now when the main question is, how do we identify the databases in RDBMS? Now EF Cord, he is the is the creator, or who created the rules which sets the tone for an RDBMS. So when they developed the rules and rules for this particular technology, or then what EF Cord came out with is based on the relational algebra methodology, or based on many algorithms, he came out with the rules for how to store data if it is going to be a relational database management system. So in next couple of minutes we will list some of those rules. So now when we develop an RDBM, when we develop a database which is helping any organization to store data, how are you going to do it? Are we going to store all the data in the form of files, or am I going to write a software which is where we are going to store all this data in a compressed format? So it is up to your visualization of how you want to store data for an organization. So now based on your thought process, based on your visualization, you may end up creating a software, but it may be used to store the data, but we may not call it as an RDBMS because it doesn't follow the rules what EF Cord dictated in the first place. So how do we define an RDBMS now? Any software which is used to store the data, and if the database is following EF Cord's rules, then we call that software as an RDBMS. It is as simple as that. So the takeaway is, if you have a database which is used to store the data in an easier way, or it is used to maintain the data in an easier way, and if it follows the Cord's rules, then we call it as a relational database management system. Now in this session we will also talk about what are those important rules. So we will take some of them. At this level of information, listing all 13 rules is not going to make a lot of sense. So we'll just take some of the rules which is relatively simple, and it really makes a lot of sense for us. So one of the rule of what EF Cord mentioned was all the data in your RDBMS should be in the form of tables. So now you know what a table is. A table is an object in your database through which we store the data of a particular customer, or a supplier, or a product, or a store of any of that nature. So all the data should be in the form of tables. So that is the main reason if you go to any RDBMS, let it be Oracle, let it be SQL Server, you will see only tables where you can store the data. Now the next one is, this database what you are going to create should support a high level language called as SQL. SQL stands for Structured Query Language. So this is the only language an RDBMS can understand. So what does it boil down to? No matter what RDBMS you are going to work on, the one common language which we use to interact with your RDBMS will be SQL. So it's a very good thing that no matter what RDBMS you are going to work on, your your SQL visualization is same. You learn only one language, but I can interact with multiple databases. The third one is it should provide a null support. What do you mean by a null support? When we are dealing with lots of data available in an organization, it's some of the data is very mandatory to store to identify a customer, and some of the data is not mandatory, or that information doesn't even exist for that customer. So what CORD says is every RDBMS should support a null value. So what does a null value mean? A null value is not a blank. It is an unknown value. So when you are storing the unknown value, it should not take any space in your database also. So that is what null is. So where exactly we use this? In your visualization of data as a slide in our courseware, you can see some customer city as well as the customer phone number allows null values, meaning I can have a customer who don't have a phone number, or who don't have a phone number in that case. So that is what it is. It should provide null support. RDBMS should provide null support is the next a rule what he imposed. So now the next rule is it should provide good security layer for your data. So what does the security really comes down to? We may have lot of information in an organization. At a manager level, you may be able to the manager is allowed to see all the information about their employees salaries and so on. Whereas when you go to a department, lower level of department, where an employee who is working as a programmer, he or she should not be able to see the data what his manager's information is, or the higher level information. So you should provide, or we can also say the HR employee should not be allowed to view the finance information. In the same similarly, your sales and marketing employees should not be allowed to see the finance information or the planning information. So if you have certain kind of rules you want to impose that this user should not see this kind of a data, then RDBMS should support that kind of a secure requirements from the business asset. So it should provide a security layer, whether you can dictate, business can dictate this user can see this object or this user cannot see this object. So it should provide a security layer for your data what we have. The other one is dynamic online catalog support. What does this dynamic online catalog support really means? If you go to a shop, how do we know what are all the products we have in that shop? Maybe I want to go ahead and look into each one of the shelves, each one of the places within the store and see whether this product exists or not. Or what is the simple mechanism which we can also think about? You can also give me a catalog which says these are all the products we have in this entire store, but once you identify I want this product, then I can tell you where it is, how much, what is the cost of it. So instead of roaming around the entire store to figure out what are the products it is displayed, I can just use that catalog to get the job done. So this is the same approach in the database also. Once you logged into the database, you should be able to know what are all the objects this database has, who owns it, who created it, when it got created, etc. So when that's why when you are logging in as a user, you want to know what are all the tables I created. Maybe I created 10 tables last week, but I can't remember all these 10 tables all the time. So I can get to know what are all the tables I created under this user. So now these kind of an information gets stored in your database itself. Think that if you don't have a catalog in a store, then the only way to figure out what products you like or what products you want to know, you have to roam, you have to go through each one of the aisle, you have to go through each one of the product storage places to figure that out. Instead of that, if I have a catalog, I don't need to spend a lot of time. I can just go ahead and look at the catalog and directly go to that specific place to bring the product what I want. It is the same approach. So what dynamic online catalog really means, it is, it's a data repository. So there should be some kind of a data repository as form of tables through which we should be able to get to know the information about your database itself. So that is called as online catalog. So we just talked about certain rules what EF code mentioned or laid out for us to create RDBMS. So if you are creating an RDBMS as a software, then you should make sure you follow each one of the rule what EF code mentions. Then the consortium can approve that your database software is of kind relational database management system. So to recollect what we talked about, RDBMS is a software through which we store and maintain the data with ease for an organization. Now if this database is following the rules of EF code, then we call that as the relational database management system. Thanks.